Chapter 1. The Letter That Changed Everything, September 15, 1983. Portland, Oregon. The mail came at 10:47 a.m., same as it had every weekday for the past 37 years. Margaret Ellen Hartsford Maggie, to her friends, Mum to her kids, and nobody much to herself anymore, stood at her kitchen sink, washing her single coffee cup when she heard Eddie's mail truck rumble past. Eddie was new, newish, been on the route 2 years now, ever since old Pete retired. Pete used to honk twice if there was a package. Eddie just drove on by, doing his job, minding his business. That was fine. Maggie minded her own business too these days. She dried her hands on the dish towel, the one with the strawberries that Susan had sent last. Chris Susand walked down her driveway in her house slippers. The September morning was crisp, smelling of wet pavement and summer wood smoke. The maples were just starting to turn, that first hint of gold creeping in at the edge. The mailbox creaked when she opened it. Richard had been meaning to oil those hinges for, about 5 years before he died. Now they'd probably creak until she did. Bills, grocery store circular, something from a rap about supplemental insurance. And then, her heart did a funny little a cream-colored envelope. Real stationery, not the cheap stuff. Addressed in careful cursive handwriting to Mrs. Margaret Hartford. The return address made her grip the mailbox for support. James R. Morrison, 2847 Lighthouse Road, Cannon Beach, Oregon 97110. She stood there in her driveway, mail scattered at her feet, staring at that envelope like it might disappear if she blinked. James Morrison, Jimmy the boy. I know, the man now she had kissed goodbye on a train platform in July 1943, both of them crying. Her in her best Sunday dress and him in his army uniform, both terrified he'd never come home from the Pacific. But he had come home, just not to her. Maggie picked up the rest of the mail with shaking hands and walked back to the house. She didn't open the letter right away. Instead, she poured herself another cup of coffee. Her second-in-law knew Dr. Patterson would scold her for the caffeine and sat in Richard's reading chair. Her reading chair now. Would she ever get used to saying that? The envelope sat on her lap, warm from the morning sun through the window. "Well, Richard," she said aloud to the empty living room. "Looks like you've got some competition for my attention today." She could almost hear his laugh, warm and understanding. Richard had known about Jimmy. She'd told him everything when he'd proposed in 1946. Sitting on her parents' porch swing, fireflies blinking in the summer dark. Richard had taken her hand and said, "Everyone's got a past, Maggie. It's the present and future that count." Maggie slid her finger under the envelope flap carefully, because good stationery deserved respect, and pulled out 2 pages of that same careful cursive. "Dear Margaret, I hope this letter finds you well. I hope you don't mind me writing after all these years. 40 years. Feels like yesterday and feels like forever, both at the same time. I'm back in Oregon, moved to Cannon Beach last month. My wife Patricia, you probably heard I'd got married. She passed away this spring. Cancer she fought hard. But, ... Well, you know how that goes. Maybe you do. I heard through the Methodist Church network that you lost Richard about 5 years back. I'm sorry. I'm told he was a good man. I've got 3 kids, all grown. 5 grandkids scattered from Seattle to New York. They wanted me to move in with one of them, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't spend my last years being someone's burden, so I came back here, back to where it started. Margaret, I'm 73 years old. I've got a heart that skips beats when it shouldn't, an arthritis in my hands that makes writing this letter harder than it ought to be. My doctor says I've got 5 good years if I'm lucky, maybe 10 if I'm careful. I don't want to be careful anymore. I want to see you again, just once. Just to know that you're real, that summer in 43 actually happened, that I didn't dream the whole thing up during some fever in the Solomon Islands. There's a coffee shop on 23rd and Lovejoy. It's called The Daily Grind. New place, run by some hippie kids with weird hair. Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m, if you're willing. I'll be the old guy with the cane, and probably too much hope in his eyes. If you don't come, I'll understand. 40 years is a long time. You've built a whole life without me in it, and that's exactly as it should be. But if you do come, ... well, I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. With more affection than I probably have a right to. James, P.S. Remember the lighthouse? Still there. Still beautiful. Still makes me think of you every damn day. Maggie read the letter 3 times. Then she walked to the phone, the yellow rotary on the kitchen wall. The one Susan kept saying she should replace with one of those new push-button models, and dialed her daughter's number in Sacramento. "Mom." Susan answered on the fourth ring, slightly breathless. "Is everything okay? Do you remember me telling you about Jimmy Morrison?" Silence. Then, "The war guy. Your first boyfriend." "He wasn't my boyfriend. He was ... double quotes." Maggie paused. "What had Jimmy been?" "He was going to be my husband. Before the war. Before your father." "Oh my God. Mum, did he die? Is that why you're calling?"
"No, honey."
"He wrote me a letter. He wants to meet for coffee." Another silence, longer this time. Maggie could hear her daughter's mind working through the implications. "What are you going to do?" Susan finally asked. "I have absolutely no idea." But she did know. She'd known the moment she saw that envelope. She was going to that coffee shop on Thursday at 2 p.m., and she was going to see Jimmy Morrison one more time, and God help her. She was 62 years old, and her heart was racing like she was 22 again. Chapter 2. Coffee and Confessions. Thursday, September 17th, 1983. Maggie changed her outfit 4 times. The floral dress was too church lady. The slacks and blouse were too casual. The navy suit was trying too hard. She finally settled on a simple burgundy dress, not too fancy. Not to plain with the pearl necklace Richard had given her on their 20th anniversary. "This is insane," she told her reflection. "You're acting like a teenager." Her reflection didn't argue. The daily grind was exactly what Jimmy had described. A hippie coffee shop with McCrane plant hangers, mismatched furniture, and a kid behind the counter with a purple mohawk and about 15 earrings. There was music playing, something with synthesizers that Maggie didn't recognize. The whole place smelled like coffee beans and patchouli. She felt about 100 years old. "Can I help you?" The purple-haired kid Maggie saw her name tag said. Crystal smiled genuinely. "First time here. I'm meeting someone." "Cool. Want to order while you wait?" "We've got a killer cappuccino. Just regular coffee, please. Cream and 1 sugar." "You got it, sister?" "Sister?" Maggie almost laughed. This child wasn't even born when she was raising 2 kids and ironing Richard's work shirts at midnight. She'd paid $1.25 for a coffee. Highway robbery and found a table by the window. From here, she could watch the door. Watch for, oh God, there he was, walking through the door, moving carefully with a wooden cane, scanning the room with those same brown eyes she'd kissed goodbye 40 years ago. His hair was white now, completely white, and he'd gotten thinner, frailer. But the way he moved, the way he held his head, that was Jimmy. That was her Jimmy. Their eyes met. Time did something funny, like a record skipping. Suddenly she was 22 and he was 24, and they were at that USO dance. And he was asking her if she wanted to see the ocean, really see it. And they'd driven to Cannon Beach in his father's Ford and watched the lighthouse beam sweep across the water until dawn. "Maggie," he said, and his voice cracked on her name. She stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her coffee. "Jim." They stood there, 3 feet apart, 40 years elapsing into nothing. The coffee shop buzzed around them, the hiss of the espresso machine, Crystal singing along to the radio, someone laughing at a nearby table, but they existed in a bubble outside of time. "You look beautiful," Jimmy finally said. "And you've become a terrible liar in your old age," Maggie replied, but she was crying, damn it, tears running down her face, and she didn't even care. Jimmy took a step forward, leaning heavily on his cane. Would it be weird if I hugged you?" "It would be weird if he didn't." He wrapped his free arm around her carefully. Gently, and she pressed her face into his shoulder and cried for everything they'd lost and everything that might have been and everything that still might be. Even now, even at 62 and 73, even with bad hearts and creaky joints and decades between them. "I'm getting your shirt wet," she mumbled into his shoulder. "I don't care." They sat down finally, Jimmy moving stiffly, and for a moment neither knew what to say. What do you say to someone who was supposed to be your whole life, but ended up being just a chapter, a memory, a what-if? "Tell me about Richard," Jimmy said, surprising her. "I need to know you are happy. That's all I need to know, Maggie. That my leaving didn't ruin your life." So she told him about meeting Richard at a church social in 46, how she'd almost not gone because she was still grieving Jimmy, still checking the mailbox every day for a letter that never came, about how Richard had courted her with patient devotion, bringing her mother flowers and fixing her father's car and making her laugh when she'd forgotten how, about their wedding at First Methodist, How Richard dropped the ring and it rolled under a pew, and the minister had to stop the ceremony while they hunted for it. "We had 41 good years," Maggie said. "He was the best man I ever knew, kind and steady and completely devoted. He knew about I, told him everything, and you know what he said?" Jimmy shook his head. He said, "Maggie, I don't need all of your heart. Just whatever part you can spare. That'll be enough for me." And it was, Jimmy. God help me, it was. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. "He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Gone in minutes. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. Just ... gone. I'm so sorry. Don't be. We had 41 years. That's more than a lot of people get." She looked at him hard. "Your turn. Tell me about Patricia. Tell me you were happy too." So Jimmy did. He told her about meeting Patricia at a USO dance in Boston in '46. Same year you met Richard. Can you believe that? How she'd been volunteering, serving coffee to returning soldiers. How they'd married in '47 and built a life brick by brick. 3 kids, a house in the suburbs, his accounting business, her garden club. 46 years together. "She knew about you," Jimmy said. "I told her one night after too many whiskeys, about 10 years in. I told her about the girl I'd loved before the war, the one I'd left behind. You know what she did? What? She said, 'Well, I'm glad you know how to love like that. Means you've got it in you.' Then she kissed me and said we should probably have another baby. That's how I ended up with Thomas, my Patricia drunk baby." He smiled, but his eyes were wet. "She died in April, ovarian cancer. Fought for 2 years, but ... double quotes, oh, Jimmy." They sat there, 2 old souls trading their life stories, their losses, their loves. Around them, the coffee shop hummed with young life students studying, couples flirting, Crystal wiping down tables while singing along to Duran Duran. But at their table, time moved differently. "Why did you come back?" Maggie finally asked. "Really? After 40 years, after building a whole life in Boston, why now?" Jimmy was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup. When he looked up, his eyes were fierce with something Maggie couldn't quite name. "Because I made you a promise on July 14th, 1943, and I never kept it." Maggie's breath caught. "Jimmy ... We were at the lighthouse. You were crying, trying not to, but I could feel you shaking. And you said, 'Promise me you'll come back. Promise me, Jimmy, whatever happens over there, just come back to me.' And I promised. I swore I would. But you did come back. You survived the war." "I survived," Jimmy agreed, "but I didn't come back to you. My father died while I was in that hospital in San Francisco. My mother was about to lose everything, the house, the business, all of it. I had to choose. Maggie, come back to you with nothing to offer, no job, no prospects, just a bum leg and dreams. Or go to Boston, save my mother, build something real, something stable." "You made the right choice," Maggie said firmly. "Your mother needed you. Maybe. But by the time I got the business running, by the time I had something to offer, 2 years had passed." "I called your parents' house in 1951, your mother answered. Maggie's heart stopped. "You called?" "I asked if you still lived in Portland. She said you'd gotten married, had a baby girl, seemed happy. Then she said, and I'll never forget this, 'James Morrison, you had your chance and you blew it. My daughter has moved on and you need to do the same.'" He smiled sadly. "She hung up on me and never called again. My mother never told me. Why would she? You were married. You were happy. I was ancient history." Jimmy reached across the table and took her hand. "But here's the thing, Maggie. I'm 73 years old. My doctor says I've got 5, maybe 10 years left, if I'm lucky. And I realized I don't want to die without keeping that promise. I know 40 years is too late. I know we're different people now, but I came back to you. Finally, even if it's just for coffee, even if it's just to say I'm sorry for being 40 years late." Maggie stared at their joined hands, both wrinkled, both spotted with age, both trembling slightly. She thought about Richard, about the life they'd built, about the empty house waiting for her. She thought about her kids and grandkids scattered across the country, about Thursday night TV dinners alone, about waking up every morning with no one to talk to. She thought about second chances. "What are you asking for, Jimmy? What do you want from me?" Jimmy squeezed her hand. "Have dinner with me. Tomorrow night. Cliff or you've gotten pretty good at spaghetti, even if Patricia's recipe is still better than mine. And then let me take you to the lighthouse. Let me show you it's still there, still beautiful. Let me keep my promise, even if I'm 40 years too late. Maggie should have said no. She should have told him it was too complicated, too risky, too everything. She should have finished her coffee, said it was nice to see him, and gone back to her quiet house and her quiet life. Instead, she said, "Pick me up at 6. And Jimmy, I hate spaghetti. Make pot roast." Chapter 3. The Lighthouse at Sunset. Friday, September 18th, 1983, Jimmy showed up at 5:45 p.m. in a 1979 Buick LeSabre Forest Green. Slightly dented in the back, bumper-wearing slacks, and a button-down shirt that looked like he'd ironed it himself and gotten it mostly right. "You're early," Maggie said, opening the door. "Couldn't help it. Been ready since 4. He looked her up and down. She'd worn the burgundy dress again. Figured if it worked once Anne smiled. "You look gorgeous. You need glasses?" "Got him. You still look gorgeous." They drove to Cannon Beach with the radio playing softly, some AM station playing oldies, songs from their youth. When "I'll Be Seeing You" came on, Jimmy reached over and turned it up. "We danced to this," he said quietly, "at that USO show, July 12th, 1943, 2 days before I shipped out. You wore your dress uniform. I wore my mother's pearls. You were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was terrified." "Me too." They reached Cannon Beach at sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink and purple that didn't look real. Haystack Rock rose from the ocean like a monument to permanence, two things that endure when everything else changes. Jimmy parked in the same spot they'd parked 40 years ago, as close as he could remember. They walked slowly down to the beach, him leaning on his cane, her taking his arm. "Last time we were here," Jimmy said, "I was 24 and convinced I was going to die in the Pacific. You were so brave. I was so scared. Scared of the war, scared of losing you, scared I'd never get to see what my life could be." He stopped walking and turned to face her, the sunset painting them both in gold. "You know what you said to me that night?" Maggie nodded, unable to speak. "You said, 'Come back to me, Jimmy. Promise me you'll come back.' And I promised, I swore on everything I had that I would come back to you." "But you didn't," Maggie whispered. Not angry, just acknowledging the truth that had lived between them for 4 decades. "No," Jimmy agreed. "I survived the war, but I didn't come back to you. And that's been my biggest regret. Not marrying Patricia, she was wonderful. Not raising my kids, they're my pride. But not keeping that promise to the girl who believed in me." He took both her hands in his. "So here's what I want to do. I want to make you a new promise, one I can actually keep." "What promise?" "I promise that for whatever time we have left, a month, a year, 5 years, 10, I will show up. I will be your friend. I will call when I say I will. I will bring you coffee with cream and 1 sugar. I will remember your grandkids' names even though they all blur together. I will sit with you on the hard days and celebrate with you on the good ones." Tears were streaming down Maggie's face. "Jimmy, ... I promise," he continued, his voice breaking, "that I won't try to replace Richard. I promise I'll be honest, even when it's hard. I promise I'll hold your hand when you're scared and make you laugh when you're sad. And I promise, I swear on everything I have left, that I came back. 40 years late, but I came back." Maggie looked at this man, this stranger, this boy she'd loved who'd become someone else and then found his way back to her anyway. She thought about the empty house, the quiet mornings, the way loneliness had become her constant companion. She thought about second chances. "Is that all you want?" she asked. "Just friendship." "Maggie, we're 62 and 73. We both buried people we loved with everything we had. We have kids who would have opinions and health problems that require quarterly doctor visits. Starting some grand romance would be complicated and probably crazy." He stepped closer, but having someone to eat breakfast with, to watch Wheel of Fortune with, to call when something funny happens, to not be alone. He smiled. "That seems perfect to me." "What if I want more than perfect?" Maggie heard herself say. "What if I want complicated and crazy?" And before Jimmy could respond, before she could think better of it, Maggie Ellen Hartford kissed James Robert Morrison for the first time in 40 years. It wasn't like the kisses of their youth, urgent and desperate and full of uncertain futures. This was softer, gentler, sadder and sweeter all at once. It tasted like time and loss and hope and coming home. When they pulled apart, they were both crying and laughing. Well, Jimmy said, "That was worth waiting 40 years for. Don't let it go to your head. I'm still not sure about this." "Yes, you are. And damn it, he was right." Chapter 4. Building a Life Again. October 1983, August 1984. They fell into a rhythm that felt both brand new and ancient, like muscle memory from a life they'd almost lived. Tuesday nights, Jimmy came for dinner. Maggie cooked pot roast, chicken and dumplings, meatloaf. The comfort foods they'd grown up on, and they ate at Richard's handmade dining table, talking about everything and nothing. Jimmy always brought flowers from the grocery store, nothing fancy, just carnations or daisies. Richard used to bring me roses, Maggie said one Tuesday, arranging Jimmy's carnations in a vase. Want me to bring roses instead? No, I like the carnations. They're different. They're yours. Thursday afternoons, weather permitting, they walked in Laurelhurst Park. Jimmy's cane made a steady rhythm on the pavement tap. Step, tap, tap, tap. Maggie discovered she liked walking at his pace. It gave her time to notice things, the way light filtered through oak leaves, the sound of children laughing on the playground, the smell of fresh-cut grass. "We're those old people now," Jimmy observed one Thursday, watching a young mother chase a toddler. "The ones who walk too slow and notice too much. Speak for yourself. I'm 62 and spry. You're 62 and magnificent." Sundays, they attended First Methodist together, sitting in the back pew. The church ladies noticed, of course. Helen Patterson cornered Maggie after service in late October. "I see you and James Morrison have become quite close," Helen said with that smile that wasn't quite a smile. "We're old friends, of course, dear. It's just so nice to see some color in your cheeks again. You've been so pale since Richard passed, God rest his soul." Maggie wanted to be annoyed, but Helen was right. She did feel more alive. She took more care with her appearance, trying new things. She laughed more. Even her kids noticed during their weekly phone calls. "Mum, you sound different," Susan said in November. "Lighter, somehow. I've been spending time with Jimmy, the war guy, the one who wrote you the letter. That's the one. Are you? I mean, are you too? ... "We're friends," Maggie said carefully. "Mom, I'm 53 years old, and I've been married 28 years. I know what friends sounds like when it's more than friends." Maggie laughed. "Okay, fine. We're more than friends. Happy. Is he making you happy?" "Yes," Maggie said, and realized it was completely true. "Yes, he is then. I'm thrilled. Invite him for Thanksgiving. I want to meet this man." So she did, and Jimmy said yes, without hesitation. Thanksgiving came with rain and wind, typical Oregon November weather. Susan flew in from Sacramento with her husband Tom and their two teenagers, Jennifer and Michael. Michael, Maggie's son, not her grandson, couldn't make it from New York, new baby and all. Jimmy arrived at 2 p.m. sharp, carrying a store-bought pumpkin pie and a bouquet of flowers for Susan. "Mr. Morrison," Susan said warmly, taking the flowers. "Mom's told me so much about you. All good, I hope." "Mostly," Susan teased, and everyone laughed. Dinner was chaos and warmth, and exactly what Maggie's house had been missing. Jimmy fit in seamlessly, asking the teenagers about school, discussing California real estate with Tom, sharing war stories that had everyone riveted. After dinner, while Susan and Tom did dishes, despite Maggie's protests, Jimmy taught Jennifer and Michael, the grandkids, how to play gin rummy. Maggie watched from the kitchen doorway, struck by how natural he was with them, how much they seemed to like him. "He's good with them," Susan said softly beside her. "He had 3 of his own. Do you love him, Mum?" The question caught Maggie off guard. It's complicated, Susan. That's not what I asked." Maggie thought about it, really thought about it. "I love who I am when I'm with him. I love that he makes me want to get up in the morning. I love that he remembers how I take my coffee and calls when he says he will. I love that he knew me before I was anyone's wife or mother, when I was just Maggie. Is that love?" "It sounds like it to me." Susan smiled. "And Mum, Dad would be happy for you. He told me before he died, don't let your mother sit alone in that house forever. She's got too much love in her to waste it on memories." That conversation stayed with Maggie through the winter. In December, they had their first fight. Over something stupid. Jimmy wanted to spend Christmas with Maggie, but she'd already promised Susan she'd come to California, and Jimmy felt hurt even though he said he understood. "I'm not trying to control you," Jimmy said, standing in her living room, coat on, ready to leave angry. "I just wanted to spend the holiday with you, and I want to see my grandchildren," Maggie shot back. "My family, Jimmy. I thought I was your family too." The words hung in the air between them. "You are," Maggie said finally, "but they were my family first. They were my family when you were in Boston living your life without me. It was cruel and she knew it." Jimmy's face went pale. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." Go to California. Have a wonderful time. I'll be here when you get back. He left. Maggie stood in her empty living room and thought about calling him back. She didn't. She flew to California 2 days later, spent Christmas with Susan's family, and hated every minute of it because she missed Jimmy. She called him from Susan's house on Christmas night. "I'm sorry," she said when he answered. "I was mean and petty, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry too. I was being possessive when I have no right to be." "You have every right," Maggie said. "I'm giving you that right. If you want it." "What are you saying, Maggie?" "I'm saying when I get back to Portland, I want to talk. About us. About what this is, and what it could be." She heard him breathe out slowly. "I'd like that." She came home on New Year's Day. Jimmy picked her up from the airport, his first time driving in months. His kids would have had a fit end. They drove straight to his rental house in Cannon Beach. They sat on his couch, drinking tea because his doctor had banned coffee after 4 p.m., and talked until the sun came up. "I love you," Jimmy said around 3 a.m. "I need to say that out loud. I love you, Maggie. I've loved you since 1943, and I never stopped, not even when I was married to Patricia, not even when I thought I'd never see you again. You've been the background music of my whole life." Maggie started crying. "I love you too. And I loved Richard too, completely. And somehow that's okay, isn't it? Somehow hearts are big enough for both. Hearts are enormous." Jimmy agreed. "So what do we do now?" Jimmy took her hand. "Marry me." "What?" "I know we're old. I know it's fast although technically it's been 40 years, so maybe it's not fast at all. I know your kids will have opinions, and my kids definitely will, and there are financial considerations and Medicare complications and 1,000 practical reasons not to." He squeezed her hand. "But I want whatever time I have left to be legal and real and official. I want to wake up every morning with you beside me. I want to be the person you call when something funny happens. I want to be your emergency contact. Marry me, Maggie." She should have said they needed time to think. She should have consulted Susan and Michael. She should have made a list of pros and cons. Instead, she said yes. They were married on September 15th, 1984, exactly 1 year after Jimmy's letter arrived. Small ceremony at first, Methodist, just family and close friends. Maggie wore a cream-colored dress, not white. That seemed right for second weddings. Jimmy cried during the vows. Susan and Jimmy's daughter Caroline stood as witnesses. Tom took photos with his new Polaroid camera. Maggie's grandson, Michael Large, 16, served as reluctant ring-bearer. Clearly mortified, but doing it anyway because he loved his grandma. At the reception in Maggie's house, their house now, Michael gave a toast that made everyone cry. "To Grandma and Mr. Morrison, for showing us it's never too late to write a better ending." Chapter 5. The Good Years, September 1984. January 1987, they had 3 good years. Jimmy moved into Maggie's house, bringing his few possessions, his photographs, a painting of a lighthouse Patricia had done in her 60s. They merged their lives carefully. Two people who understood that love at their age wasn't about passion, though there was some of that too. Thank you very much, but about partnership and presence and choosing each other every single day. Tuesday dinners continued. Thursday walks in the park. Sundays at church. They added Saturday morning crosswords. Jimmy was better with words. Maggie was better with trivia. Friday night Wheel of Fortune. Yelling answers at the TV like Pat Sajak could hear them. They traveled a little. Drove up to Seattle to visit Jimmy's son Robert, who was skeptical at first, but warmed up when he saw how happy his father was. Flew to Sacramento twice to visit Susan. Even managed a trip to New York to meet Michael's new baby. "I'm a great-grandfather again," Jimmy marveled, holding the tiny infant. "You never thought I'd live to see this." But there were hard days too. Jimmy's heart acted up in winter of '85, not a full attack, but a warning. 3 days in the hospital, his kids flying in, everyone scared. Maggie sat by his bed every day, holding his hand, reading him the sports section, because he hated hospital TV. "Don't you dare die on me, James Morrison," she told him on day 2. "We've only been married a year. I need at least 5 more to make this worth the trouble." "Only 5, he wheezed. "Fine, 10, but you have to stick around for them." "Deal." He came home with new medication and strict orders to take it easy. Take it easy meant shorter walks, afternoon naps, and no more lifting anything heavier than the newspaper. Jimmy hated it but complied, because he'd promised Maggie 10 more years, and he intended to keep his promises now. They had good days and bad days. Days when Jimmy felt strong enough to walk to the corner store for milk. Days when getting from the bed to the bathroom exhausted him. Days when Maggie's own arthritis flared up and she couldn't open jars or button a sweater. They took care of each other with practiced patience, the kind that only comes from lived experience. In spring of 1986, they planted a garden together. While Maggie planted while Jimmy supervised from a lawn chair, offering commentary. "Those tomatoes need more space. These tomatoes are fine. Thank you. You're going to regret it when they're all tangled together. I'm going to regret letting you sit there, criticizing if you don't stop." Fair enough. The tomatoes did get tangled together. Jimmy never said "I told you so," but his smug expression said it for him. Summer of 1986 was good. Jimmy's health stabilized. They took day trips to the coast, always stopping at their lighthouse. Sat on the beach eating ice cream like teenagers. Collected shells for Jennifer, who was starting a collection. One August evening, sitting on their porch swing watching fireflies, Jimmy said, "This is enough, you know." "What is this?" asked these quiet evenings. "I've spent so much of my life chasing bigger and better, bigger business, better house, more money in the bank, and it was all fine, all good. But this," he squeezed her hand, "this is enough. This is everything." Maggie leaned her head on his shoulder. "You're getting philosophical in your old age. I'm getting honest in my old age. Different thing. I like it. Good, because I'm too old to change now." They laughed, and the sound mingled with the crickets, and the distant sound of someone's radio playing, and the crick of the porch swing Richard had hung 20 years ago. That fall, they took a trip to Crater Lake, the place where Maggie and Richard had honeymooned in 1947. Jimmy was nervous about it. "Are you sure?" he asked when she suggested it. "That's a memory of you and Richard. I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding. I'm inviting you. There's a difference." So they went. Drove through the mountains, stayed in a little motel that had been there since the 50s, walked carefully along the rim trail with Jimmy leaning heavily on his cane. "It's beautiful," Jimmy said, staring at the impossibly blue water. "Richard proposed to me here," Maggie said. "Well, he'd already proposed, but we came here on our honeymoon, and he promised me 40 good years. He gave me 41. He was a good man." "It was, and so are you." "He's different good, but good nonetheless." "How do you do that?" Jimmy asked. "Do what?" "Hold both of us in your heart without diminishing either." Maggie thought about it. "Hearts don't work the way we think they do. They don't divide. They multiply. The love I had for Richard doesn't make my love for you less real. It makes it more real, because I know what I'm choosing. I know what marriage means, what commitment costs, what it's like to love someone through decades and difficulties. And I choose you, Jimmy. Every day, I choose you." Jimmy cried then, standing at the rim of Crater Lake, and Maggie held him while tourists walked past, politely, pretending not to notice. Christmas 1986 was their best yet. Both families, Kamal, the kids, all the grandkids, 2 great-grandkids. The house was chaos and noise and so full of life that Maggie thought her heart might burst. On Christmas night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Maggie and Jimmy sat by the tree, just the two of them and the twinkling lights. "Thank you," Jimmy said. "For what?" "For saying yes, to coffee, to dinner, to the lighthouse, to marriage, to all of it. For giving an old fool one more chance." "Thank you for coming back," Maggie replied. 40 years late, but you came back. I'll always come back to you. In this life or the next." It was a promise. Neither of them knew then how soon he'd have to test it. Chapter 6. The Last Promise, January 1987. Jimmy's heart gave out on a Tuesday. Fitting, really. Tuesday was their night, the night he always came for dinner. Even after he moved in, even after they'd been married 2 years. They'd kept the tradition because traditions matter when you're building a life. He'd been feeling off all day, tired, short of breath. Maggie wanted to call Dr. Patterson, but Jimmy waved her off. "Just old age, catching up with me. I'll be fine after a nap." It wasn't fine. At 3 p.m., Maggie found him collapsed in the bathroom, called 911, rode in the ambulance holding his hand while the paramedics worked on him, sat in the hospital waiting room while doctors did their thing. Dr. Patterson came out at 5:47 p.m. His face told her everything before he said a word. "It's his heart, Margaret. It's failing. The medication isn't working anymore. We can keep him comfortable, but ... How long? Days? Maybe a week. I'm sorry." The kids started arriving that night. Robert from Seattle, Caroline from Chicago, Thomas from New York, Susan from Sacramento, Michael from New York, all of them converging on Portland, on the hospital, on the room where Jimmy lay with tubes and wires and that steady beep 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 of the heart monitor. He was awake though, tired but awake. Quite the party, he joked weakly when he saw everyone gathered. Should have worn my good pajamas. Dare. Caroline was crying. Don't joke. Not now. Especially now, Jimmy said. What else am I supposed to do? They took turns sitting with him. Maggie mostly stayed, sleeping in the chair beside his bed, holding his hand. They talked when he had energy, were quiet when he didn't. On Thursday, they're walking. Jimmy asked everyone to leave except Maggie. Need to tell you something, he said. His voice was weaker now, raspier. Save your strength. For what? I'm dying, Maggie. Might as well use my last words for something important. He squeezed her hand, barely any pressure left. I kept my promise. What promise? You won at the Lighthouse. The one I made 40 years ago and again 3 years ago. I came back to you. Took me 40 years, but I came back, and I showed up. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Sunday. I was present. I was here. Maggie was sobbing now. Your work. You kept your promise. Got one more to make, Jimmy said. Last one, I swear. Jimmy, don't I promise that wherever I go next, if there is a next, I'll find you again. In whatever comes after this, I'll look for you. And when your time comes, whenever that is, I'll be waiting. 40 years, 400 years, doesn't matter. I'll wait. That's a big promise. It's the only one that matters now. He died that night, peacefully, with Maggie holding his hand. It just slipped away between one breath and the next, the heart monitor going from beep 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 to one long, steady tone. The nurse came in, checked, turned off the machine. The silence was deafening. I'm sorry, the nurse said gently. Maggie nodded, unable to speak. She sat there holding Jimmy's still warm hand for another hour, memorizing his face, saying goodbye to the boy she'd kissed goodbye 40 years ago, and the man she'd married 3 years ago, and all the years between and after. Finally, she leaned down and kissed his forehead. See you soon, Jimmy. Don't be late this time. Epilogue. 15 years later, Margaret Ellen Hartford Morrison lived another 15 years after Jimmy died. Good years, mostly. She watched her grandchildren graduate college, get married, have babies of their own. She took up watercolors, wasn't very good, but enjoyed it anyway. Volunteered at First Methodist, teaching Sunday school to kids who thought she was ancient. She never remarried. Once was special, twice was a miracle. She told people who asked. 3 times would be greedy. But she kept Jimmy's memory alive. Kept his photograph on a nightstand next to Richard's. Kept the letters he'd written her, both the one from 1943 and the ones from their 3 years together. Kept Patricia's lighthouse painting hanging in the living room. Every September 15th, their wedding anniversary, she drove to Cannon Beach, walked slowly down to the lighthouse, using a cane now, her own joints giving out, sat on the bench they'd claimed as theirs, and talked to Jimmy like he was sitting beside her. Another year, old man, you've missed a lot. Jennifer had twin boys, can you believe it? Tom retired from his job. Susan's talking about moving back to Oregon, says she misses the rain. And me. I'm 81 years old, and my knees sound like Rice Krispies when I stand up, but I'm still here, still waiting for you to keep that last promise. In 2002, on a warm June morning, Maggie had a stroke. Susan found her in the garden, surrounded by the tomatoes she'd planted that spring. At the hospital, Dr. Patterson retired now, but still her doctor told Susan and Michael there was nothing to be done. She's 81, he said gently. She's had a good run. Maggie was conscious for another day. Her kids and grandkids gathered, just like they had for Jimmy 15 years before. They took turns saying goodbye, telling her they loved her, thanking her for being the best mom, grandma, great-grandma they could have asked for. That night, alone with Susan, Maggie said, "There's a letter in my desk, the top drawer. Read it after, ... double quotes, Mom. Don't read it," Maggie insisted. "Promise me." "I promise." Maggie died that night, peacefully, the same way Jimmy had, just slipped away between one breath and the next. Susan found the letter the next day, written in her mother's shaky handwriting, dated 2 weeks earlier. "To my children and grandchildren, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Domi Sadiv had 81 amazing years, and that's more than most people get. I want you to know something important. I lived fully. I loved deeply, not once, not twice, but continuously throughout my life. I loved your father, grandfather, Richard, with everything I had. I loved James with everything I had left. I loved all of you with everything I am. And none of those loves diminished the others. They built on each other, grew from each other. Love isn't finite. It doesn't run out. The more you give, the more you have to give. If you learn anything from my life, learn this. It's never too late. Never too late to take a chance, to say yes, to open your heart one more time. Never too late to write a better ending. Be kind, be brave. Be open to second chances and third chances, and as many chances as life offers you. And if you ever find yourself at a lighthouse, watching the waves, remember me. Remember that love endures. Remember that promises kept are sacred. Remember that every ending is also a beginning. With all my love, always and forever, Mom, Grandma, Maggie, P.S. Tell Jimmy I'm on my way, and this time I'm going to be early. Susan read the letter aloud at the funeral, standing at the pulpit of First Methodist Church, crying and laughing at the same time. Half the congregation was crying too. They buried Maggie next to Richard in Willamette National Cemetery, just like she'd requested, and they scattered some of her ashes also as requested at Cannon Beach, near the lighthouse where her story had really begun. Afterward, if you're reading this story, you're probably around my age, 65, 70, maybe older. Maybe you're widowed, like Maggie was. Maybe you're divorced. Maybe you never married at all. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you've forgotten what it feels like to have someone choose you. I want you to know something. It's not too late. It's not too late to open your heart. It's not too late to say yes to coffee with an old friend. It's not too late to take a chance on love, on companionship, on simply not being alone anymore. Maggie and Jimmy's story is fictional, but the truth in it is real. Hearts are bigger than we think. We can honor our past loves while embracing new ones. We can keep our promises, even if we're 40 years late. We can start again, even at 62 and 73. So here's my question for you. What promises are you still keeping? What second chances are waiting for you? What would you do if someone from your past reached out today? Now it's your turn. Please take a moment. If this story touched your heart, I need to ask you something important. After listening to Maggie and Jimmy's story, what would you rate it? Out of 10, what number would you give it? Please comment below and let me know. Your rating matters so much to us. Every comment helps us understand what stories resonate with you, what touches your heart, what makes you want to share with your friends and family. And if you haven't already, like this video. It helps more people discover Maggie and Jimmy's story. Subscribe to our channel. We share new heartwarming stories every week. Share this with someone who needs hope. Maybe a friend who's lonely, a parent who's been alone too long, someone who thinks their best days are behind them. Your support inspires us to keep creating these stories. Every like, every subscription, every share tells us that these stories matter, that love at any age matters, that hope matters. Special request: if this story moved you deeply and you'd like to support us in creating more content like this, we'd be honored. You can reach us on WhatsApp to share your thoughts, your own stories, or to support our work. Every message means the world to us. Your story matters. Your love matters. Your life matters. Your life matters, no matter your age. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of this community. With love and gratitude. Until next time.